Hello, our names are Carlee Hoag, Sara Strohschein, and Alexis Foster, and we are here doing our VidCast on the history of print and journalism with an emphasis in newspapers. Print began in 1040 AD in China with movable type, which is a system of printing and typography that uses movable parts to reproduce documents on paper. However, an actual printing press was introduced around 1440 in the Holy Roman Empire by Johannes Gutenberg. Later, the printing press was introduced to the United States. In 1638, a printing press was developed in Cambridge, Massachusetts. This led us to the first newspaper, which was developed in Boston in 1690, called Public Occurrences. Unfortunately, this newspaper was destroyed and no evidence was found of its existence until 1845. Public Occurrences was destroyed because it was illegal to publish anything without approval of the governor. The first successful newspaper was created by John Campbell in 1704 called the Boston's Newsletter. The first photography published in an American newspaper appeared in the Daily Graphic on March 4, 1880.
The Industrial Revolution dramatically affected the rise of newspapers. In 1850, the census showed 2,526 titles in circulation. During the Civil War, America was in demand for up-to-date, timely news. Reporters, then called specials, were important to recording the history of America. Popular news outlets started around this time as well. The New York Times, then called the New York Daily Times, started in 1851. The Washington Post began in 1877, and the Wall Street Journal began in 1889. Muckraking and yellow journalism are two terms that have a lot of meaning to early newspapers. President Teddy Roosevelt gave investigative journalists the nickname muckrakers, in which a rake was used to dig up filth, or muck. A muckraker's goal was to present problems to the American public, mostly political, and invoke moral outrage and prompt citizens to take action. Lincoln Steffens was the first true muckraker, exposing corruption in local government. Yellow journalists was journalism that emphasized sensationalism over facts. Yellow journalists often used bold headlines and cartoon strips to exaggerate a story and get the public's attention. The strategy was used mostly for war and foreign affairs. An example of yellow journalism was when journalists used it to get public support for the Spanish-American War, which would ultimately expand the global reach of the U.S., by printing rousing stories about the harsh Spanish rule in Cuba that later proved to be untrue. In the 1890s, familiar characteristics of newspapers surfaced: bold banner headlines, comic pages, illustrations, and sports events. By the 1910s, the newspapers as we know it today had emerged, but their evolution was not done yet. By 1980, technology beat paper prints, and your local news and updates were just a click away.
The first newspaper to go online was the Columbus Dispatch on July 1, 1980. This launched a thread of online papers including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the Los Angeles Times, as well as many other newspapers. These newspapers are still online today, and with almost everyone having access to the web, it didn't take long for online journalism to take over. We also have seen an increase in citizen news, such as blog posting and community boards. This has helped evolve journalism into our day-to-day lives. We now have access to everything we want to research at our fingertips. We learn about foreign affairs from the comfort of our own homes instead of relying on print shipping to us or us being present in the country. Users still subscribe to online papers and blogs to get notifications as soon as new pieces have been published. News just doesn't get more instant than that. Although it's convenient, the rise of online journalism does have its flaws. Anyone who has access to the internet has the power to post whatever they want to. Checking how reliable a source is important to ensure that you are not reading false information. For example, websites like BuzzFeed, Weekly World News, and really anything like that you may see on Facebook are more likely fake news than to be real news. Not only that, but there are some websites that may be biased. For example, CNN has a reputation of being biased toward the Democratic parties, while Fox News is biased toward the Republican parties, especially during campaign races. ABC is the highest credibility rating of any news source, which is 67% of people voting them very credible.
Journalism has been around for decades, and it has come a long way. Newspapers have informed us on wars, political campaigns, celebrity scandals, sports, and so much more. Yes, paper print sales may be at an all-time low, but journalism as a whole is far from over. The writing and reporting of updating news will always be high in demand, whether it be from a printed newspaper, a website, or one day, maybe even a hologram.